So today is Training Tuesday, and if you follow me on Twitter at StephenOnTheMove, you've seen me post the last couple of weeks talking about what I'm doing from a physical perspective to train for the 2021 London Marathon that I'll be participating in as a charity runner for the Change Foundation. But I want to take a little bit of time to talk today about why I am training for this marathon, which will be on October 3rd. And it's ultimately because, as I said, I'm participating as a charity runner for the Change Foundation. And why am I participating as a charity runner, though, for the Change Foundation, which you may or may not know about? No matter where you live in the world, this may not be an organization you know a lot about. And it's an organization I didn't know existed until a little bit over 2 years ago. And the backstory of why I'm doing this race, why I'm training to run my first ever marathon, and why I'm training to run my first ever marathon as a charity runner for the Change Foundation goes back to January 2019. So my wife, Katie, had been put in touch with a Japanese colleague who teaches at the Saitama Prefectural School for the Blind. And Matsui-san had invited Katie and I to attend a demonstration of visually impaired rugby because some people had come from England to Japan to perform a 2-day presentation and demonstration with some exhibition matches among some of the athletes at this demonstration, at these workshops, to introduce visually impaired rugby to Japan. So we trekked out there because how do you refuse the opportunity to learn about something as a sport that you've never heard about, and you have the opportunity to see it being introduced for the first time in a new country. So we trekked out there. We spent a handful of hours training and learning about it and participating in some drills with some of the Japanese athletes who were there. Eventually, after a lunch break, there was a scrimmage between the athletes who were there. And one of the athletes happened to get a busted lip. Not intentional, it happens, it's sport. And I was asked if I wanted to fill in and participate with the aid of vision simulators. So if you're not familiar with what vision simulators are, it is what it sounds like they are. They are sunglasses, sort of, that you can wear, and they're different, and they will simulate what somebody with various visual impairments might see the world as. And so I got to play and participate in this. And that was my introduction to the Change Foundation. And most especially it was my introduction to Alex and Dan, who were the representatives from this charity that is UK based, had come over to Japan and introduced VI rugby. And over the last, well, now 2+ years, but over the next few months, in corresponding with them and getting to see both Alex and Dan and the VI England rugby team come to Japan in October for the Rugby World Cup in Japan in 2019, I learned that they typically have a charity runner in the London Marathon. And at that point, I just started running, or had been running for about a year actually, and I hadn't really thought about running a marathon. But I was excited to think that I could run a marathon, potentially the London Marathon, and to fundraise for an organization that I had become attached to after learning about it only a handful of months previously. And I talked to Alex about that opportunity and expressed my interest in being a charity runner. And it didn't happen, unfortunately, for 2020 for a variety of reasons. One, because I was late in talking to them about being a potential charity runner. And then, of course, COVID-19 and the global pandemic threw a monkey wrench in all sorts of races throughout the world. But this spring, I had the opportunity to, again, express my interest when the Change Foundation posted on social media that, hey, we are looking for people who are interested in participating as a charity runner for us in the London Marathon. Email us, tell us why you're interested, etc. I did. And back in early February, I got selected to be a charity runner for the Change Foundation. And I'm still blown away almost 3 months after the fact, because it's the epitome of goals that you don't know that you have until you realize that, oh my gosh, this is a goal. I want to run the London Marathon, but I don't want to just run the London Marathon. I want to run the London Marathon and raise money and raise awareness for an amazing charity that does a lot of great things. And they do a lot of great things for a variety of people. I learned about the Change Foundation because of them trying to introduce sport to people with visual impairments and to empower them to make changes in the world. But that's not the only thing they do. They've introduced blind cricket in various places throughout the world. They've worked with underprivileged youths in London and throughout England to get them into school and to finish school and to do productive things with their lives and make a difference in a positive way within their local community. They've worked even in the United States, building relationships between the New York City Police Department and residents in Harlem. And to think about the fact that I get to sit here and talk about this amazing charity and the work that they do to help marginalized people be empowered through sport is emotionally moving and meaningful to me. And a couple of months ago, I sat down, I talked with my friend Alex, who works at the Change Foundation, and we talked about, planning and coordination and what they can do to support me as I fundraise for them. And one of the things that I shared with Alex is why I feel like I'm doing this. And it relates to an American architect, philosopher, all-around eccentric guy called Buckminster Fuller. And one of the things that he has etched on his tombstone is "Call me Trim Tab." And what that relates to is that he was talking about societal change and how do you make the world better. And sometimes we have the power within us to do these big, amazing, and awe-inspiring, powerful things. Not everybody gets to do that, though. Sometimes we're just going to be part of that process that leads to that societal change. And for Buckminster Fuller, that's what the trim tab is. And the trim tab is that little small piece that exists on a rudder of a ship that allows the propeller to move and turn. And the trim tab's just this little small thing. And yet it's actually probably one of the most critically important things on this giant cargo ship, because without the trim tab, the propeller doesn't turn, and therefore this giant ship doesn't turn. And for me, when I think about being a charity runner for the Change Foundation in the London Marathon, that's what I'm doing. I'm being the trim tab. I am doing my small part in the world to make it a better place, to help others, and in this case, particularly help others who have been marginalized and to empower them through sport. And so when I ask you to make a donation, and when I post about my training on a weekly basis or periodically other days when it's not a Training Tuesday. That's why I ask. I ask because I want to be that little trim tab that makes that small move that leads to that big change. And I hope that as you watch this, you'll check out the link below, donate on my behalf to the Change Foundation. And you can be as well that trim tab that makes that little move to make a big societal change. So, why am I training? I'm training to make a difference in the world. I'm training to run the 2021 London Marathon to help marginalized people through sport. And I hope that you'll join me with whatever donation that you can make. Even if you can't make a donation, share this video, post something on social media, email your friends, let other people know what I'm doing and how they can make that difference in the world.